Football is officially here, at least the spring variety. Who was impressed thus far at spring practice, and what do we think of this alleged QB battle? A special guest joins us to break it all down.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome into the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajeev and Justin, back together on a Sunday evening to talk about all things football. We've got spring football. It's absolutely exciting. A great time. Joining us today from 247 Sports, Badger 247 beat reporter Nick Osen, the real Nick Osen on Twitter. Nick, how are you, my friend? Welcome to the Bucky Report. This is your second appearance. I wasn't here for the first one. I was traveling. It was just you and Justin. So I'm glad I get to be with you today. How are you, my friend?
I've been looking forward to this. I'm really good. I'm happy to be back. I appreciate it, my guys. And you know what? Other than probably fall camp and the games in the fall, maybe the best time of the year. So I'm excited to get into some football. Grateful that we get to kind of see some things with the Badgers here. I didn't have that type of access, maybe at other spots. So really excited to get into it.
And we are also very happy, so you can share some of your observations with us as well, which is great. Before I come to you, Justin, let's we're gonna lead off with first of all, let me give you topics today. We're gonna do in spring football. We're gonna go through all the positions, take you through observations that Nick has obviously seen himself, and that Justin and I and Nick have also read about from all the other people that are there, journalists and everything like that. So we're gonna go through that position by position, kind of talk through some key questions for each one. We're at the Bucky Report on Twitter, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Before we get into football, though, we have a little bit, just a little bit, Justin. I promise, just a little bit of basketball, and it's only about the man that we all love, Mr. Bo Ryan.
I'll let it. This
has been inducted or will be inducted into the Naismith Hall of Fame. Congratulations, Bo Ryan! Here we are talking constantly about Greg Gard and everything that he's doing for this program and what he's not doing. Whatever, we're not going to get into that. But Bo Ryan never missed the tournament. He won 4 Big Ten championships. He won 3 Big Ten tournament titles. He went to 2 Final Fours. I don't know how many Sweet 16s, but I think there were 7 or 8. I'm not sure. Look, the guy was incredible. Guys, give me one thing that you loved about Bo Ryan. I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit. We didn't talk about this. So give me one big thing you love. Justin, I'll lead off with you. Bo Ryan's the man, right? He's just the man.
Sideline antics, hands down. It was like watching Vince McMahon on the sideline. Just
that's actually one of those that I didn't
expressions. It was great.
That's a good one. Honestly, some amazing news. Yeah, for Coach Ryan, obviously in the Badgers basketball program. I think for me, I would go into just the way that he could get just about everybody to buy into a specific role, no matter kind of how highly they were recruited or maybe if they weren't. And I think that was such a key thing for some of the best teams we've ever seen. Those 2013 to 2015 teams. I think everybody was just so close. He got the most out of them, development. Congratulations to Coach Bo Ryan. It's about time.
Yeah, it is. He's incredible. He's the best coach we've ever seen at our school. Unbelievable record in the conference play. I was lucky enough to be there for some of those years, and for most of the years, not most of his years, but most of my years were with him. Amazing stuff. What my favorite thing was player development. You kind of touched on it a little bit there, Nick. Think about all the big guys that we had in that time, from Kaminsky and Decker and Wilkinson and Happ and Lure and all these guys. He developed them really well, and those guys all improved. And I think that's something that we took for granted when Bo was there, and we just almost assume that it happens at every university, but it really doesn't. Bo Ryan is a legend, and I'm so happy for him that he's in the Hall of Fame. But there we go. On to spring football. Justin, my friend, you love spring. You love anything football. It's like Christmas Day constantly for you. What are your emotions right now? How excited are you that we are now 5 practices into spring practice?
4 in, I think, right now. And I'm loving it, other than the fact that they're just finally getting pads on. It's the first couple of practices. It's kind of I'm so glad it's back. But I'm it's kind of limited in what's actually happening. There's not a lot. It's install, and there's not a lot of scrimmaging type stuff going on. So you're not really truly getting a feel for what's happening. It picks up now. This is where it gets hot. And this is where where the rubber hits the road a little bit for the position battles, because now they're going to start actually pushing these guys a little bit with what they've learned, and you'll get to see who's going to stand out.
Justin likes the hitting too. He's been ready for them to get the pads on. I already know that when we've talked about some recruits and, O linemen, D linemen, I know he's been looking forward to that. And yeah, I'm really pumped, quite honestly. I mean, it really is one of the best times of the year. I think that there's actually, I'll get to this probably in this show, certainly more if, I'm back on closer to the season, but I think excitement is building, and I think it should be. I think it's warranted. And just seeing even a few practices, I think not only the talent, but just the depth at so many key spots is just better and kind of higher than it was last year. And that I think the Badgers really needed, and kind of the changing of the guard and the program, kind of growing back up. So I think there's going to be a lot, of excitement in that. And then just, of course, scrimmages building, position battles. Football's back for a while, guys.
Mm-hmm. Dude, Nick, you are speaking my language, man. When you talk about building excitement, I am Mr. Positivity on any of this show, any show. Like I love it. I'm very excited about it. Let's get right into it. We're going to start with quarterback. So we'll go through kind of all the positions. Nick, we'll lead off with you here. Talk through some of the observations you've seen. Obviously, we have heard a little bit about a battle, right? It's not just TBDs to take. Obviously, Locke is in there. Talk about Evers a little bit. Dark Ray says Nick Evers making a push. Would love your thoughts on what you've seen from him. What have you seen out of the quarterback room at spring practice so far, Nick?
Yeah, definitely. So I actually was going to start with Nick. I think that Evers is actually, he's not, in terms of like the top guy, but just working my way toward that. I think he's actually really shown some flashes. It wasn't necessarily, the best day that he had so far this past weekend, but during the week, I think that would have been Tuesday and Thursday, whether it was some of his mobility, athleticism, just like kind of, making throws a little bit off platform or into traffic. Like it is quite clear that he has taken a step, maybe not still that huge step to be starting yet at Wisconsin, but I felt like Coach Longo and actually TVD, Tyler Van Dyke himself, had some glowing reviews to say. I know that Justin, is able to read a lot of my stuff. Rajeev, hopefully you saw it too.
Oh, yeah.
But, it was literally, I believe it was he does not have a ceiling, like in terms of his growth. So I've seen some of what he's done. In terms of the top battle, obviously between Locke and Van Dyke, it is a legitimate position camp battle, at least from what I have seen so far. I think that we've seen the high-end glimpses from Van Dyke, whether that's his size. He's had a couple really nice runs. I think kind of some of the deep ball, it was looking good in kind of the latter half of yesterday, just kind of in terms of what we saw Saturday. But Braedyn Locke has been really consistent, guys. I think that was a little bit expected because we know how well his mind works. He's been in control of the offense a little bit. He has further command, but even just seeing him, if you've been able to watch some of his pressers, he's put on some good weight, good muscle, had actually some really good deep balls Saturday. Both guys did. That was actually one of my biggest takeaways, so it's definitely going to be something to monitor, but I would say sincerely, both of those top two guys have had their moments, and Locke has looked a little bit more in control, in command, but I think that's still expected as of now, just within the new offense for Van Dyke.
I think that's great to hear, honestly, about Locke. And I have seen that. He definitely looks like he's in shape. And it's like, you know what? Good for him. We went out there and got Tyler Van Dyke in the offseason. Everyone was immediately just being like, oh, well, let's write off Braedyn Locke. No, he's going to come to play. And that's the kind of competition that you need there. Justin, does it concern you at all that there even is this QB battle? Because, we heard we were all ready for TBD to just be the guy. There were probably some assurances made about his playing time. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. But are you concerned that there is a battle? Or are you thinking that TBD should have been a little further along? Or what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think I expected some of this. I knew that Locke was going to be far more versed in everything that they were going to be doing at this point. So I think the way I've looked at this, and I thought it would be close early, is you're going to see a jump here at some point from TVD when he finally gets the opportunity to have this all sink in and gets more comfortable with things and stops thinking so much and starts making plays. It may not be till the second or a couple weeks from now. It might be the last few practices where he really takes off. But I think from a physical tool standpoint, if it starts clicking with him he's just got the RPMs and everything on the ball that some of the things that Locke can't do. Like Locke doesn't have a bad arm, but he doesn't have the kind of arm that Van Dyke has. And that's where he gets a chance to separate. Right now, I think Locke is probably far more in rhythm in terms of timing and everything else that they want to be doing. And that's something that is going to get better with Van Dyke as they go on, which is why I think that people are jumping the gun a little bit, freaking out on some of it. It's like, you got to give him time. Like, this is all brand new to him, and Locke is a year in already. Now, what it does mean is that I like hearing that Locke has taken a step.
Yes.
It sounds like he's going to be, at worst case, you have a really capable backup that could potentially come in. And hopefully Evers even provides quality depth there by the time we get around to fall camp.
I think it's absolutely massive that Evers is pushing. Look, you got to have push, right? You can't just have it be one guy. And whether it's coach speak or not, whether it's a true battle or not, it sounds like from what Nick's saying, it is. And like, obviously Locke is looking good, which is great. That can only make us better. This is no negativity here around these guys being pushed. And I think that's great to see. Nick, any question in your mind that leading into the fall, obviously it's looking way into the fall now, that Tyler Van Dyke is a starter? I mean, any early on observations lead anything that you to think anything that other than he's going to be the starter?
I wouldn't say, I have like any major questions with that or anything, but I will say this, the fact that, I'm telling you, and, here and there, I see other writers' tweets and things like that. And like the fact that people you guys, you trust in the media are saying it's a legit battle. I think people are maybe looking at it in the wrong way. I think it should be more so. This could actually be a good thing because Braedyn Locke, obviously you need to increase, some of the accuracy and completion percentage from last year. He might not, always have the cannon and things like that, but you watch this young man, this young athlete, like speaking with us in the media. I think you want a guy that has that type of mentality. Both Van Dyke and I'm talking about Locke as well. I think both of their heads are in really good spots. It sounds like, they're obviously both trying to win the job, but like when Van Dyke has had questions or things like that, getting into a new offense, I think Braedyn's been a good leader within the room. So yeah, I would say it's overall a really good thing. And just aside from the battle, Locke and Van Dyke had just some gorgeous throws and one-on-ones yesterday. I think it was like back to back to back. I think two of them were touchdowns, and then there was like a defensive holding, so the receiver couldn't get to it. But I'm not going to say everything has been perfect, but overall, I would be pretty encouraged about the quarterback room right now.
Nice. A couple quick comments and questions here. Easton Park says, ask about Evers transferring if he's third on the depth chart. Someone needs to leave, right? That's his next comment. I really think that with the physical tools that Nick Evers has right now, that's the focus. Like, let's just see how he can do this season and see where he can find a role. I don't know that he's not going to be the starting quarterback. We know that. But if he's growing and if he's taking steps, I think that he can certainly, still benefit this team in some way.
I don't think that you can necessarily assume that he's going to leave. Like we've talked about this before with him, that I have said previously that I felt like if he was not seriously being involved in the quarterback room or being involved as like pushed, like he's showing development, that he was likely to leave. I thought that was pretty likely if he did not seem to be making up ground or growing. That doesn't seem to be the case. And I think that changes things a little bit, because when you have somebody with his athleticism, if he continues to grow, you're now looking at a guy by fall camp who could potentially be basically at the same level as the other two guys if he gets enough reps here in the spring to really get comfortable. And I think that that's the big deal, because you remember last year, he really didn't get many reps in spring ball, and I would assume fall camp was kind of the same way. So now you're giving him an opportunity to really take advantage of it with how they're splitting up reps right now. It's going to be a huge for him. Like, if he can get comfortable in this, it's going to be an opportunity for him to make up some ground. What I heard, somebody had said that he had got some first team reps with the yesterday. Was that accurate, Nick?
I don't remember if it was yesterday or earlier in the week, but yeah, he has gotten at least a few for sure. I want to say I saw that indoors, so that was earlier in the week. But yeah, I mean, again, not like a firm part of the battle, but I'll just say briefly to that question. And, it's awesome people are asking questions. I love that. I understand the question just in this day and age, but I have not heard a whisper, a peep, anything like that, because not only is he legitimately getting reps, like we said, growing, developing in the offense, but also there are further, kind of opportunities, whether it is this year or next for him here. Like there'd be another battle potentially next year. And from my understanding, he and his family are very happy and supportive within this Badgers program. So I would say I certainly wouldn't bet on anything like leaving. Yeah.
That's good to hear. Let's move on to running backs. We'll start with Will Hanna's question here. Nick, I want to know if Atuka has shown any explosion through the line. There has been a lot made on Atuka so far. What have you seen out of him and the rest of the running back room?
Absolutely. It was something I was looking for a little bit. I know that Justin and I have talked about him. I was looking for it a little bit. So that would have been, I think, my first practice. So like the second practice as a whole on Tuesday. I was seeing all of kind of the reps for running backs. But yesterday, I didn't include him in like my top, 4 or 5 standouts I've been sending out, but he was just under it. A couple freshmen, KBJ and then Atuka really looked good. I think not only the way that he hit the line, so showing some explosiveness, but then just running through some of the guys in the middle of the defense. I had not my questions, but definitely like intrigue, because obviously you don't necessarily picture a back of that size maybe in like an air raid offense. But I think it was just a fantastic addition in this class when you've got kind of more of the pass catchers or some of the more versatile guys in the rest of the class. So I would say absolutely. And I like what I've seen. I think it's going to be massive for him to have gotten here early.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the running back room looks like it's shaping up pretty nicely. Justin, your thoughts on him, and also Walker seems to be making a bit of a splash as well. I mean, I think we look to be in a really good position where last year when Allen left, it's like, oh crap, what are we doing with this room? And now we've got Malusi, we've got Walker, we've got Atuka and all the young guys behind. We've got Nate White. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, you have me taking the beating on the Discord, bringing up that I'm not super high on Ches, and people are taking it kind of the wrong way.
Justin.
I'm sorry, man. I take a look. Hey, I told everyone when I was looking at the breaking down his numbers, and I said he's played 22 games for Wisconsin, 17 of which he's been under 5 yards per carry. And I'm like, that is kind of who he is at this point, unless something changes this year. He's a guy who gets you probably a little over 4 yards a carry. And in a Wisconsin offense, that's not great. So I said that there was a chance some of these other guys could pass him up a little bit. Atuka is a guy, I think he's not going to be a guy who's going to hit home runs, but I think he's a guy that can grab those chunks of 10 or 20. He's got good vision. Like we talked about it with the film, and my knock on him when he was being recruited was I don't see the top end breakaway where he's going to be able to get north south and just take off, because he wasn't really pulling away from people in his film. But I'm like, but he has really good vision and he's got good feet, and that will give him an opportunity to be very productive at running back. It's just he's not necessarily going to be the home run hitter that I felt that Dupree and Jones were capable of being if they got in there. This is a massive spring for him, getting the jump on those guys, because I think they flat out want those guys, the other two, to be involved in this room. And he's going to make it hard for them to do that if he's capable after spring, which I think that might be the case. I think that he's a guy who can give you good reps. I still think go ahead.
And just if I can add, so I think it's been massive for his development, right? Whether that's 2024, 25 or further, because he's obviously so young. I'll say this though, Justin, the numbers like you mentioned, I think Malusi's looked really good. And I am somebody actually going back to Clemson even that's been high on his game. However, I will say this, we've been talking about running backs here for 2-3 minutes. And one of the best players that I've seen consistently so far too has been Tawee Walker from Oklahoma. So I think that while it may not have, and it might, but it may not have, we'll just say like long-term, like, a James White, Melvin Gordon, Corey Clement, like something like that. I think from 1 through 7, 1 through 8 in this running back room, guys, it is the depth and talent that we have become kind of accustomed with in this Badgers program over the last 25 years. That is a position I'm comfortable saying, there are some positions, obviously, you got to see growth, things like that. Running back, I think it's going to be terrific. And I think the staff did a really nice job, not only compiling talent, but mixing some of the best traits within the room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, listen, I like Ches Malusi, and if Ches Malusi does fall down our depth chart, that means our depth chart is really damn good, because Malusi is a guy that's worthy of RB1, a little RB2 carries. I mean, for sure, and he's been such a great player for us. And you talk about the injuries that man has suffered. Like, he keeps coming back. He had a great start to last year before that awful game
He did.
Lafayette that I was at. Yikes. But listen, I mean, the room is in good shape. Let's move to another big room that we talked a lot about, wide receivers. You know it. I'm just going to start here. I want to know about Tretch. Give me what you're seeing. Sounds like when he's out there,
he is
playing with Pauling. I mean, it's like a cheat code. I think Ryan Eilers tweeted this out. Give him some credit from Badger Notes. He talked about it. It looks like a cheat code when these guys are out there together. Tell me what you think about Tretch. Justin and I absolutely love him. There's no secret. I feel like all Badger fans love him. Do you see him getting some good field time this year, and how's he look so far?
Ryan, by the way, one of my guys. I'm a big fan of his. But, in terms of Tretch, guys, I'm somebody, and Justin knows this a little bit, I don't buy into the hype too early, right? Regardless of player, place, team, what have you. So I wanted to see it with my own eyes this last week or two. Guys, he's legit.
Yeah.
I think the cheat code was very well said, because it's like, obviously, when you see him, and granted, he's a slot guy, so he's not, necessarily have to be 6'3", 205, but like, he doesn't maybe look the most physically imposing. He's got good hands,
and
which
then he starts
obviously, you need to have in the slot. But not only, some of the twitchiness that we've talked about on the show and off of it before, guys, but he just also kind of has a layer of just making you miss and kind of getting comfortable. I think of like
it's such a feel, right? He
a
has
Wes
such
Welker type feel. Yes,
Yes.
like a Danny Amendola,
Yep.
similar to that, where he just sits himself. Even Kelsey at tight end, he sits himself in his spot, and then he just makes plays with the ball. I've been really impressed. And I'll say this, I will be shell-shocked if you're not seeing him get a lot of reps. I mean, he's been getting run at times with the ones. So, yeah, you will see him. I think he's a really impressive young player, and I think Badger fans should be grateful that, he's a guy that you don't always see in a Wisconsin-like offense.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I flat out said the second I saw his film from the camp that he ran at Wisconsin and the way he embarrassed the guy that was trying to cover him, I'm like, we don't have this, and we need it. And I really like Pauling, but to me, Tretch is the twitcher of those two guys. Like, he's just more elusive. And I would say the KBJ is another one of those guys. I watched his film from high school, and I'm like, his vision in tight area spots when he's got three guys on top of him is insane. Like, these two guys are just so good at being able to do it. Tretch is really gifted at creating separation too. Like, that his twitch, I want to see trips with those three guys out there, with them and a big guy on the outside, and just be like, all right, one of you guys is going one way, one's going the other. And
it's going to happen.
The corners just sit there and be like,
those three and Bryson Green or
what
something.
What are we doing with this?
That'd be exciting.
It's absolutely going to be. It's a big weapon. We've always known about the weapon. I mean, look, and he didn't play at some chump high school either. He played down the street from my house here at Bishop Gorman. He played against legitimate college level competition in practice during games like that. That's when you play in that kind of a schedule that he played. Like, it's impressive stuff. He is very, very good, and I'm super excited about it. Any other notes
Branch out of the water, who was a 5-star, and they were both slot guys.
It's amazing.
From wideout, I would say, honestly, he was a standout one of my days. CJ Williams. I think he's a guy that, I'm grateful that a lot of fans and readers on my site ask about. I just always enjoyed getting to know him a little bit. Interviews last year, always kind of positive, like you had said about yourself, Rajeev, and, kind of how I like to be. I think that it wasn't the year he probably hoped for last year. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I can't tell you, exactly yet where he's going to be, but like, you will see him playing this year. Obviously, he made one of the best, probably a top 3 grab, maybe top 4 of the week this week. Deep ball, I believe that one was from Braedyn Locke earlier in the week. Contested ball, about 45 yards downfield. And Coach Guyton loved that. I could see it from where we were watching. He loved that he showed his hands late. So really nice play from Williams. And then I would just add, KBJ, I obviously saw his film, but in a deep room. I do think it's a pretty deep room at this point. I didn't necessarily expect like an impact early. And I mean, we'll see what he does, right? He's been going with the 2s, 3s at times, but just his hands in traffic. And like you mentioned, some of that quickness, Justin, I've been impressed. And I think at least long-term, another really good slot weapon for Phil Longo.
The athleticism continues to hit this team, right? That's what Luke Fickell wants. That's what we're bringing in. We're constantly seeing it. It's
Can
really,
we just
really
put a couple of cones on the outside and then just have like 4 slot receivers on the field?
I mean, absolutely. All right. So on the receiver side, let's talk about tight end real fast here as well before we move on to the O-line and finish out the offense. Obviously, this was an issue for us last year, right? I mean, we didn't really have a lot of depth there. Ashcraft is here now. We've got some young guys. Any standouts so far, Nick, from the tight end room?
Yeah, so we'll see again where he ends up. I never like to promise things, unless they're obvious positions. But just a guy that physically and then kind of fundamentally has impressed me is Jackson McGohan. Obviously the transfer, former commit, very familiar with this staff at Cincinnati. I got to know him a little bit actually when I was at Iowa State, so I thought that was pretty cool. He ended up here after this transfer, just physical. I get the sense, and we haven't spoken with him, but I really get the sense that he's a guy that's just coming in ready to work. Wasn't the perfect initial season he was maybe looking for at LSU. Maybe loved it, just wanted a change of pace. Yeah, definitely a stacked room. Where here, I do think the room is almost bleeding talent. Like, I do think it's a good thing, but I would say it's one of those spots where it is pretty darn open. And you're looking for guys to kind of showcase their skill set. And that when unprompted, an OC like Coach Longo is mentioning a guy, like he's doing something right early. That happened with Evers at quarterback. And then with Jackson here at tight end. Seagraves as well, actually. But, just to my eyes, I think I could give you like 5 names that have done some really good things. I think Rob Booker is a little bit ahead of maybe where I expected him. But just in terms of, a little bit of standouts early, I would say McGowan. Yep. And then Seagraves looked really good Saturday too.
Nice. Justin, any thoughts or things you want to know about the tight end room?
McGowan was a guy that I had earmarked coming in because I felt that year that he was going to get working under Kelly at LSU was going to be big for him because they go heavy on the tight end. So I thought it would be a good year for him before coming here, just from a developmental standpoint. So I actually felt like he'd be in a good spot coming in and being ready to play here. And I actually think that he was somebody who I was high on for this fall. And some people thought Ashcraft or whatever. And I'm like, I'm going as a receiver. I feel like he's a little bit more of a split out guy than say Ashcraft is, who's a little bit more of a traditional tight end. I actually really like him as a guy you can split out and attack the football with because he's got some really good film from high school as a receiver.
Yeah, I don't think you can really underestimate Ashcraft either. I mean, I think Ashcraft is a guy that I know McGowan is kind of like the sexy new guy on the block, right, from the tight end room, which totally makes sense. I mean, he obviously has a lot of physical tools, but Ashcraft's got a year under his belt in the system, and he came out as a freshman and played. He didn't play great. He didn't play poorly. I mean, he did what he needed to do. He looked like a freshman at times, but now he's going to be a sophomore. He's going to have that year under his belt, another year of conditioning. So I'm excited about the tight end room. I mean, where it was last year to all of a sudden now this year, a bit of a jump there.
Physically, I'll just note, Ashcraft looks really good too.
Yeah.
Put on some good weight, muscles still moving well.
I mean, when you got a guy like Brady Collins, there's a lot of people making gains in that area, man. It's good to see. It was actually real quick. Is that something that you've noticed there in person as well? Like some of the physical gains that Brady has had, especially guys that you saw last year?
Yes, honestly. I mean, I feel like a lot of spots, there's always kind of talk about a strength coach, and this is a spot here. I think Brady Collins deserves like any credit that he's getting. I mean, I just think of, you didn't ask about this player, but I'm just thinking of guys that have been here like 2.5 months, like Landon Gauthier, in the freshman class.
I saw the before and after film from him. He looks like
totally,
he put on quite a bit.
Changing builds, good weight, really impressed. I think Collins does a great job.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting with him because when they talk about strength and conditioning, like I know people want to see the results instantaneously, but it's year 2 or 3 where you really see what a strength and conditioning coach can do when they get to stack those gains for a couple of years. And that's kind of what's happening now. Sounds like there's a lot more of the first guy off the bus type guys that are on the roster now than there were last year.
Year 2, you start to see it at least in individuals, and year 3 kind of by that collective unit. I would definitely say I'm seeing it.
It's Luke Fickell's secret weapon. I mean, that's Brady Collins is the man. I mean, he's the man. He's been on Ryan's show several times, and he's great to listen to. And he's excited. Like the guy's just it's such a great, refreshing culture shift in that department as well. Let's go to O-line before we talk about defense. The first team seems pretty set. One of my things that I want to hear from you about is some of the young guys. There's a lot of second team guys. Like I'm a big Kevin Haywood fan. I think we all are. He looks like he's going to hopefully get into the 2 deep this year. That's really where the concern is, right? Like it's second team and whether if we have an issue with Jake Renfro, which guard slides over to center. What have you seen so far with the O-line? Anyone impress you?
Well, I'll start with a starter real quick. Jake Renfro is legit. I think he's going to be a really good player, good fit. Not a surprise to a lot of us, but I think he'll be really good. And young guys, Haywood, he's got just a ridiculous ceiling. I think physically just where he's at, athletically, really good things. I got to pay a little bit more attention to that group of twos as a whole because I was actually keying in on really 3 guys. It was Renfro, like I mentioned, with the 1, Haywood, and then a guy that honestly, I've been pretty impressed with, and I think it's going to be really good that he got here so early. There are going to be freshman moments, but Coverly, I would not overlook him long term. I got the chance to meet him in New York about a month after I started. I just try to see recruits when I'm on the road. And again, we talk about Brady Collins, physically kind of the gains that he's already made. I think I was seeing him mostly with the 3s. I believe he got a couple reps with the 2s. I think, don't officially quote me on that, but like doing some good things with the 3s. I think he moves a little bit better than I expected. And I think, when you've got those 2 already here, you've got the 2024, the rest of the class really coming in. I think it was just a terrific job again by the staff, and both of those guys have caught my eye.
It stinks that Mandel and Corey aren't here because I'm super high on those 2 guys. And it's
Jensen too.
Who? Jensen too. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
But Mandel and for interior guys, it seems like that's where we're a little bit thin. And those 2 guys, I think, are locks to be really, really good players here. I was kind of shocked that Corey didn't end up as the 4-star too. His film he moves really well for an interior guy.
Yeah, I'll note right there. Again, I just like making these parallels when I've been able to know these guys for a while. Emerson Mandel, over a year and a half, I've been familiar with his game. Iowa State was deep in that recruitment, and obviously he came here to Wisconsin. He's going to be here this summer. Guys, if you had to bet, like my word on a guy that I feel is going to be successful in the entire class, I mean, I might say Mandel. Like the staff was incredibly excited when we were talking with them a little bit on signing day last year. I got to see him up in person, and just getting him with Brady Collins too. I mean, I'll say it right now. I mean, my hottest type of take. This will be the hottest you get from me. I don't see him falling below a second, early 3rd round pick if he wanted to leave after 3 years with even a higher ceiling. Guys, he is just mentality.
Hot take Nick Osen.
Mentality, build, work ethic.
100% agree with you.
Yeah.
And I said when they got him, I'm like, I could see him being a 1st-round draft pick at guard. Like he's got that type of athleticism for that position.
Rajeev, he's big time, man.
Dude, he's a freak on the interior.
I love him too, man. I mean, I don't know that he's 2nd-round lock or anything like that, but I'll tell you.
It's hard to call him a lock now, but he's got that kind of upside. Like,
the upside for sure.
We've got a few years to see it, but
he moves so well that I would have no issue if they said we need to shove you out to tackle, and I would just be like, he can do it. Like he could play all 5 spots if you wanted him to, but athletically, he might be the best guard we've had since Zeitler. Like he's that type of athlete.
Ceiling wise, agreed. Yep. But you'll see him on the interior. Yep.
All right, let's go to the defensive side of the ball, boys. Let's start up front. We'll talk about D-line quickly. There's not really too much, I don't think, to talk about there. I think we really want to talk about the linebackers. But, Nick, anything – it sounds like, JTJ is still kind of the guy. Kurt Neal's been playing a little bit. Anything kind of catch your eye on the defensive line that needs to be talked about?
Yeah, I would just say my first day, so that would have been Tuesday, Kurt Neal looked awesome. I do think he's going to be pretty important, obviously, for that unit. I think that Jamel Howard is still growing, but he flashed his potential, which I really wanted to see. He blew up a couple pretty big run plays. I think that was Thursday. So I love that. And then I wrote this in my, my pretty in-depth breakdown, like 900 words or so. I think Ernest Willer is going to be pretty big time. I'm not saying right now, I don't, put pressure on freshmen like that earlier or anything like that, but we knew his rating. We knew kind of where he was at physically. I think he's already started to grow in that sense. And then I was just watching him, really kind of hitting the sled and kind of in like some reps against, an O-lineman. I think he moves really well. I think that Willer might be a little bit more ahead of the curve than I expected.
That's good to hear, man. That's good to hear. Go ahead, Justin.
I had him figured, like, if things go well for him, if he can get to 15 snaps, it would be huge for them, because he's the type of athlete that's just, if the offensive line starts getting a little gassed, he's the type of guy that can really come downhill on somebody quick. What about Bowlers?
Bowlers, I actually wrote about him too. I wrote that he's settling in, I think, in that D line. I think that he's put on kind of some of the weight necessary, obviously, to play at D line. But yeah, he made a play. I don't want to get it wrong. So I believe it was in the run game, but he made a nice play I wrote about. And then I actually really like, kind of some of the work he was doing with his quick hands. I saw somebody just asked about a Hill. I believe Elijah Hills they're asking about. I actually wrote the same about him. I need to see more just in terms of going against an O-line. Like, obviously, when you're one person, it's hard to always see what's going on. And I've kind of focused on one position one on each side each day. But I would say hands, violent hands is something Hills told me about in his commitment process. And I saw it with my own eyes. They're quick, rotational guy, I would think, not necessarily with the ones or anything yet, but maybe eventually. And I do like kind of his potential.
Yeah, we've also read. I read a little bit from Jesse Temple as well about them looking at kind of like a 5-5-1 sort of playing like one down lineman. So there's a lot of like mixing things up. I'm hearing at the practice too from a formation perspective from Mike Tressel, which is good to see, because look, the one strength that we have right now, we look at least on paper, the linebacking room went from like down here to pretty much up here. Leon Lowry, every journalist I've read from saying that, look, Leon Lowry looks like the guy. What do you think about Leon Lowry, Nick? And the linebacking core looks about as deep as we could hope for, given where it was last year. I don't think anyone can refute that particular statement, but because we've got speed now, we've got so many new guys in the room. That's something I'm excited to hear about.
Leon Lowry, I think, was comfortably the best player the majority of the week. Like, I wrote that, he's got some ability to get to the passer, but like, sealing things on the edge, containing in the run game. Physically, he's further along than I maybe expected in kind of the transition to the Big Ten. He's looked great. And I think I would compare linebacker to running back on the offensive side. I think there's like an over oozing of talent and depth in a good way, because you can have depth at these spots, and then you can have depth where you actually can count on these guys to get in and make plays. And while, obviously I was sitting right here in this office covering a lot of the portal stuff, I was, thinking, wow, it's a lot of linebackers, things like that. But then they always shake out. And I kind of get the sense, which I've been just incredibly blown away, because you got to remember, they're still college athletes. Guys like Jake Chaney, guys like Peterson that have been here and are welcoming and leading the groups, bringing in the competition. I think it's going to be really good. Those have been really my standouts. And then Jaheim Thomas was one of the best players Saturday. Totally understand, obviously, why you'd bring in a guy like him. And there's no question. I mean, we knew how important the LB room was to Tressel's defense. And I think now they've got the guys to really do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna push you real quick on this one here and say, who do you think the starters are? Because I've gone out and said that I think when push comes to shove, when all's said and done, it's going to end up being Pius and Lowry that are out there.
Yeah,
athletically, those are the two guys that offer the most upside in terms of playmaking.
Okay, so you want all four or just outside?
Give us all 4, man.
Just outside. You can give us all 4. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, don't quote this as gospel or anything.
One guy's not out there yet.
Your opinion.
So,
just your take.
But for the middle linebackers, I think there's a guy that's very well thought of that may not be taking a bunch of reps yet.
I think focusing on the outside here, Lowry, I would be like, absolutely shell-shocked. I mean, he was the best player on the team from what I saw for those first 2 days. And then if I had to give a name right now, I think I would still go with Peterson just because of the completeness of his game. He's been here. He's a leader. However, Justin, use the starting, kind of term very loosely.
Yeah,
because
put out there
a lot of rotation.
Yeah, rotational, situational stunts, pass rush. Pius has made those high ceiling plays. So, I'm just going off of what I've seen, and it's not like I've seen a guy, let's say Peterson, that's been out there and hasn't performed, so something like that. But, yeah, I mean, Pius, just the way he gets to the passer, he has been the best in terms of that. Obviously, they weren't sacking the top quarterbacks, but a sack in early practices. So, yeah, he's been great. And I think it's a beautiful thing that we're asking these questions and, nobody's going to be like, whoa, you think this guy? Because they can go a legitimate 4 deep at each spot.
Yeah, and Witt, for everyone that's out there, somebody asked the question earlier. Witt has been practicing, and Witt has been showing some things. And he's got a skill set that nobody else has at that position. Yes,
he has been practicing.
Right on the field, baby. Don't get hurt, man.
Nobody deserves some good luck more than Aaron Witt when it comes.
He really showed some things that would have been Tuesday. Again, that first practice that I was at. That's one of the things that stood out to me. Really, his bend and his burst.
He had it when he came in. So
no, he looked good at that, and that's why I just said a legitimate. You could go 4 playable, 5 maybe at outside, legit 4 at inside. We'll see how things evolve, but I want to give a lot of credit to Tressel and Fickell and the defensive staff. They're not afraid, especially when you are multiple on the defense, to use different kind of situations and show different guys, snaps, whether it's a guy getting 50 and a guy getting 22 or something. These guys are going to play.
How is what guys on the inside would you say are the top couple?
I mean, I think right now I would definitely,
we know Jaheim's there, obviously.
And I think I would
guy in for anything else.
Yeah, I would still go Chaney. Just in the top 2 right now, because it hasn't just been a leadership type thing for him. Moving laterally, I think he's looked quicker this year. Obviously, he's always had the strength. But again, I wrote good things about Curtis and Allegro this week too. So I do think.
Has Chase been out there at all?
Has he shown anything yet? A little bit. I mean, he hasn't been lining up as much with the ones as those guys, but. Again, crazy deep room that's not only going to be nice this year, but through 2026.
I mean, I can't even imagine. There's no position that went from 0 to hero like that. And I shouldn't say 0, but talk about a huge jump that room went. That's just massive for us.
Well, you could argue
it was so we were getting swallowed up constantly last year, and it was such a
slow reacting group too. Yeah, they're getting swallowed up because they weren't moving well and diagnosing well.
And hence we needed more athleticism, and when we brought it, which is great. All right, let's finish off with the defensive backfield. Let's start with cornerback. Obviously, Hallman's going to be CB1. Ryan Eiler said earlier, and I can't find his comment now, but the RG Delancey, who I really like, by the way, RG Delancey, because that's who I want to see as CB2. Anything that kind of jumps out at you there? Do you think RJ Delancey's going to take that spot, or do you think it's Nazir's to have?
Well, I think he's saying that he's taking over Rico.
He's not.
I don't know.
Let's just stop that.
We'll see if he throws a comment in there. But yeah, I was going to say that's a lot to ask because Rico's an All-American.
If I know Ryan, which I do a little bit, I think he's having a little fun, but he's also saying he's been impressed with Delancey. Obviously Hallman's been sidelined. He's a superstar, so he's still going to be the guy. But I've been a little bit more impressed with Delancey's versatility than maybe I expected, because even though he's not the tallest guy, he can play multiple spots, whether inside, outside in this defense. So it's tough to say exactly whether he will officially take that spot, Rajeev, but just in terms of what he brings, I mentioned versatility, but that guy can hit and is not afraid, to hit at that DB spot. I think he has been, awesome. And I guess I'll mention this isn't, a new guy, and I know he's not a corner, but I have other guys I want to mention too. So I just don't want to forget. Hunter Wooler treats like practice like it's a Saturday in prime time,
Let's
which is a
go.
really good thing. I mean, that guy just doesn't take plays off. He was hitting this week. I want to give you like a young player too. Duclona had some really good, I think it was 2 PBUs that I can remember this week. And then a guy that I'll be honest, I mean, I'm obviously newer to the beat, newer coming home. I didn't know a ton about Charlie Jarvis, but he was one
I
of
don't
the
think
best.
any of us knew much about Charlie Jarvis.
Okay, so that makes me feel better, and like obviously we'll see. There are always guys that stand out in the spring. You see what their roles are, but I mean I'm huge on giving credit throughout kind of this spring ball, and I know we'll be talking in fall camp and things. He was a top 5 or 6-ish player Saturday. He had an interception, one massive hit, and then another pretty good PBU and one-on-one. So some really good things from the DBs. They just got to, stay healthy, especially with some of those stars.
What are your thoughts on it? Seems like we want to go big in the slot because they've been playing Austin Brown there pretty exclusively. We have some smaller guys that I would have thought they would have liked in that spot that we just don't seem to be wanting to use in that regard, like Jace Arnold or somebody who are just quicker guys that, they're playing more speed guys. I'm kind of surprised that we're not doing as much with that, but I guess you think about them covering up a tight end, it's a little bit like they're
things like that. And I also really did get the sense, I mean, I'll look back at the quotes, but I think this would kind of line up with what Tressel was saying too. I get the sense it's still early in that sense with playing different guys there, specifically, the nickel or the slot. I think they're just giving guys different looks. I do think Austin Brown has looked pretty good there, even going back to the limited game film he had there. But as a whole, that's a group that there's maybe more, competition a little bit in terms of some spots, just because you're not going to play like as many at one time. But the stars, I talk about Holman and Wooler, but then I'm close to putting Delancey in that category too. I was excited about him for Wisconsin the night he committed. Like I remember getting ready to, kind of watch his tape and write about what he brings. I don't think people talked about him as much when that happened because there was, so much excitement about like QB with Van Dyke and then obviously the linebackers. But guys, he's been one of the better players on the defense. And I think this staff is going to use him really well.
That's exciting. I love Delancey. I think that's a huge pickup for us. Yeah, that'll be great. I want to ask about Braedyn Moore a little bit. Yep. He's a guy that I think we were all really excited about. When he was recruited as a guy that I think has a high upside. What have you seen from him? How do you think he fits into the defense this year?
Very well. We will see kind of where it ends up shaking out, but in terms of just making some plays, in the pass game, I think how he was moving, quickness, laterally Saturday, like he got a lot of good reps. And I think, like Justin just mentioned, he is going to push. That's a spot that obviously there are a few names you'll see, but I think Moore had a massive offseason, and he's a name that you're going to continue to hear from myself in the media, I think, this spring as well as into August when we get to camp.
Any other players you want to talk about, Justin? Any other positions?
I'm going to throw this one up here from Zach Bartz asking about the werewolf, Snowden. So we've been ongoing. He's kind of been a guy that we've all targeted and just wondering how he's going to eventually end up being used, because I personally have felt that if he's not flashing at corner this year, then I think you have to move him to safety, because you want him settling into that position as early as possible rather than making him, because that cornerback room is going to get so saturated that it's going to be really hard unless he's just a freak at that spot. And I think he can be an all conference type safety with his skill set if they drop him back there. So has he been mostly at corner, or is he playing some safety?
Yeah,
now?
From what I've seen, mostly at corner. I agree with you in terms of his safety potential. I think this next month, 2 months are going to be really important for him, and we'll probably get a better gauge. But yeah, he's been primarily at corner. I remember watching him, mostly kind of in some one-on-ones. And I think he's a guy, I was familiar with his recruitment. I still think that his potential is really there, but I think he's got to continue to, develop, kind of work on some of the speed a little bit in terms of coverage this next month or two. And then I'm sure I'm going to be back on this show. He's a guy that I want to watch a little bit more and get a little bit more into it for you guys, because he was somebody I was excited to see this spring as well.
I'm pumped about him. I think he'll be. I mean, that physical size at cornerback is such an amazing thing.
If it clicks there, you're talking first round draft pick. Like, you don't have 6'4" corners that run probably a 4.5 or better or whatever he's probably running.
Absolutely. Nick
Osen.
No,
his potential. Yeah. No, I was just agreeing on that. Definitely.
Yeah. Nick Osen, Badger 247. Check out his content on Badger 247. If you don't, it's a lot of it's behind the paywall, but trust me, it's worth the pay. The content that he and Evan Flippin out there is good stuff. Justin, final thoughts from you at all, my friend?
Let's just get it rolling. I want to hear about the more of this stuff. I'm ready for more practices, and then I get to be angry that they're done, and then I have to wait 4 months for something else to happen again.
Well, we need to keep talking about football, because Justin's not allowed to talk about basketball anymore because he doesn't want to talk about it, and I don't want to talk about it with him. So it's
Hey, Justin, you know what though? After spring, then we're getting into OV season and stuff, and we'll have plenty of recruiting to talk about.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, then I mean it's going to be it's always a nice slow build to the beginning of the season too, which will be great. We'll go through all kinds of good stuff.
And this staff has no qualms of throwing out offers, so I constantly have people to look up and watch stuff.
Watch some film, yes, sir.
Nick, it's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you for providing all the good content to our listeners and to us. This has been excellent. And yes, you are most welcome to come back as often as you like, especially as we get more spring practices going, and of course coming into the season. We definitely look forward to having you on. So thank you so much. And as always, guys, on Wisconsin.
I'm Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.